Welcome to the 6-5 podcast. I'm your host today, Daniel Newman, principal analyst and founding partner at Futurum Research, joined today by my ever-present Austonian friend and cohort in the 6-5, Patrick Moorhead, back in the saddle. Pat, you've been on the road, getting a little fresh air. How you doing today, buddy?
Daniel, I'm just so happy to be in the chair, when I've got this massive computer, 4 displays, talking to my buddy right now. I mean, I'm doing great. I took a couple days off. When you run a business, you don't really take vacation where you're 100% out. I was probably doing 50%. But yeah, I mean, I was been on the road for a good 2 weeks. I came in on the 28th to do our last podcast. But here we are.
It's been a while. We have a crew of an audience that depends on us, Pat, because of the 6-5. We do 6 handpicked topics, minimum news, deep analysis. We want to provide our audience with the under the hood look through the lens of the industry analysts as to what is going on in tech. And that's what this show is all about. And today we've got another good show, some great topics. We'll be talking Nvidia. We'll be talking ARM DevSummit. We'll be talking about Microsoft. And we got, a bunch of very interesting things that I'm sure everyone out there is going to really enjoy. Before I kick into the show, Pat, which I'm going to just throw the ball up momentarily and let you carry it for a minute here. I do have to remind everybody out there, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And while we will be talking about publicly traded companies, we do not suggest by any means that you take anything we say as investment advice. Do not do what we say. Just listen, enjoy, and just know that we love talking tech and we love our community. So thanks everybody again for tuning in. So let's get started, Pat. GTC, Nvidia, Jensen from the kitchen keynote. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I mean, that man has a lot of spatulas in his kitchen, and they're all different colors. I'm pretty sure there are symbols in there that I haven't figured out. I think I need AI to figure out what they really mean. But yeah, so we do analysis and not necessarily news, but it is important to talk about a few of the things that Nvidia did announce. And from my point of view, Nvidia leaned the most into their DPU. So when I first heard this notion of a DPU, I did a big eye roll because we have a CPU, a GPU, an NPU, and an APU. So do we really need a DPU? The answer is yes. So the DPU stands for Data Processing Unit, but essentially, Nvidia, via their acquisition with Mellanox, is in networking, and the DPU is essentially a giant offload engine to offload certain security functions, to offload enough to let the big honking processor, whether it be a Xeon or an Epic or a Graviton 2, to be able to do what it does best. And this is something that's big in the industry. AWS really popularized this, where they actually bought their own chip company called Annapurna and built what they called Nitro. And Nitro was an offload system and also a virtualization system. So Nvidia came out with a family of DPUs, 4, maybe 5, if you count some of the long lead stuff. And essentially what this does is it gives Nvidia a bigger footprint, I believe, not only into the cloud data center, but also through its OEMs into the enterprise data center. It announced the week before that it had an alignment with VMware, because you can't do anything without software. And VMware is essentially the virtualization, and they support containers where you can manage an environment with this DPU in it. So that to me was the biggest piece of news. But I do need to hit this other piece, which just makes so much sense. It's a toolkit called Maxine. And what Maxine does is it uses the GPU to make video calls better. And that's either better in bandwidth constrained environments, or that's making it so that it looks like you're looking at the camera as opposed to this display over here where you're looking at content. So essentially what it's doing is it's creating a virtual movie of your image. And if you get into environments where it's throwing frames, it uses frame interpolation, so it looks a lot smoother. And, it makes a lot of sense because, and I don't think this is a stretch, I don't believe that this is NVIDIA, going too far out there, because they use a lot of these techniques in their video games today, like DLSS as an example, which is essentially a way to do super sampling through AI. So those were two of the bigger ones that came out to me. There was a lot of delivering on prior promises that they had done before, right? When the ARM announcement went out, they had talked about this big supercomputer in Cambridge. Well, they gave a lot more details around it, what it's going to look like, what it's going to run, even down to the LinPack of performance. They talked about partners, AstraZeneca and GSK, who are kind of who's who in pharmaceuticals. So there we have it. That's my take.
Oh, it's good stuff, Pat. And I also have a take, but you hit on a lot of the high notes. I did a piece. I watched Jensen's keynotes. You're right. There are a lot of spatulas, and they are all interestingly different colors. I'm sure probably one per food group or something. I'm not sure. I had 4 really kind of key topics that I drew. One was the Daca Sdk, which really does tie into the DPU, which is really all about providing that powerhouse enablement for the developers, developing applications using the DPU accelerated data center infrastructure. It basically is doing for data center, for traditional CPU, what CUDA does for GPU acceleration. And so, they're putting into play what NVIDIA has done well and built on. And they're doing it at scale now, and they're crossing into compute, which, can you be surprised? Can you be surprised at all now, especially with where it's heading with the ARM acquisition that it went there? So I'll skip the DPU, which was itself the second thing. But I'll just only say it's really interesting to sort of look at structurally how you take all the software defined and infrastructure management and you put it inside the instruction set on the chip, as opposed to making those external, control planes that have to be managed by IT. So I thought it's really interesting. I'm kind of, want to see how that works out. I want to hear from IT and CIOs how it's being deployed in the business. But as AI continues to scale, I think it'll be important. They had some really important updates, I thought, to the EGX Edge platform and Jetson Nano. So I do think the company has recognized the edge scale and the fact that what it's doing in the data center has to be expanded to the edge in order to meet opportunities. And there's been some really good partnerships put in place. VMware, Red Hat, Kubernetes, all those things are being put in place so that NVIDIA AI can be run at the edge on bare metal or on VMs. And then finally, and you sort of talked about this, but I thought there was a couple of cool applications for collaboration, both Omniverse Beta and Maxine. One really focuses on creating, these virtual environments for collaboration on engineer design, robotics. And the second part with Maxine is really all about the way you embed collaboration into more applications and how AI can play a part in that. And so the company's really playing everywhere, Pat. I think that's one of the most interesting things about it was sort of this company that had these couple of buckets. It was a gaming company, a training AI company, vehicles with a little bit of pro viz. And now it's really just stacked, edge to cloud, end to end, CPU to GPU to DPU to VPU. They're doing it all. Nvidia is a really interesting story, watching it develop. I'm sure we could talk more about it, but this is the 6-5, meaning we need to get to the next 5 topics. And that was the worst fast run through any topic ever. All right, Pat, let's talk ARM now. So we went from Nvidia to ARM DevSummit. I tracked it a little bit, but you work really closely with ARM. Would love to get your take on that one.
Yeah. So ARM brought out what I think was their biggest number of announcements I've ever seen them do. But it was interesting when I tried to find the string that tied all those together. I thought it was difficult. Like I can go and look at the last 7 years of tech cons that I went to. That was the previous name. And I could say, okay, this year it was about security. This year was about IoT. It was a little harder. And then I was thinking, hey, was that because, the communications, I wasn't tuning in or I wasn't getting in. And then it hit me that ARM has grown up as a company. And I feel like their announcements were really an expression of the last 5 years of investments. Because I would always go in and say, okay, ARM's weak here, ARM's strong here, and I need to see something from them. But so I want to take this opportunity, Daniel, and kind of step back. And when I look at the things that were announced, and by the way, I really did like System Ready, which was essentially, write one piece of code, run on anything, and capture your investments. Was probably the biggest announcement. Rene Haas brought that out. But when I step back, the company has matured so much in areas that they were prior weak. 5 years ago, we were kind of counting like, who is the next ARM general purpose server company that's going to go out of business that tried to go in with ARM, right? I saw 3 or 4, maybe 5, depending on how you want to count something. But it wasn't good. Now, that's not to say that ARM wasn't in the data center, because ARM, has at least 30% market share already in storage and networking. So what I'm talking about here is general purpose. But as we saw with AWS's Graviton 2, AWS is very much a real entity inside of general purpose server. And as we saw some of the moves with Huawei and also with some of the HPC, there's ARM doesn't have to apologize anymore. Automotive, now ARM has pretty much automotive specific parts. They even have sensors for machine learning with vision. IoT, they have an entire IoT CDP and a lower level management offering that can essentially go all the way down to the BIOS and update everything. Edge computing with Project Cassini. They already own all of the smartphones out there. So probably the only place where market share eludes them, and I think they probably got the most difficult path, is probably going to be in the Windows PC market. I'm not expecting Chromebooks to magically take over the Windows PC. I'm not expecting the ARM-based Macs to suddenly go from 7% market share to 27% market share. So that is the one area. Qualcomm is definitely upping the game there. But if I had to have to pick on something, it's how they're doing in the PC market right now. Which, who knows? Maybe this Nvidia ARM thing will be the catalyst that ARM needs to go in and take on Intel and AMD.
Yeah, that'll be a really interesting battle to watch. I said that this deal could take Nvidia to $1 trillion. It was a risky bet, but at the rate of growth and the interest that the market seems to have in Nvidia, and the fact that it has this really unique position in AI, it certainly is poised to see an acceleration, no pun intended, in its growth. let's move on, Pat. Speaking of growth and Oracle, over the last few months, we've talked more about Oracle, TikTok, which got weirdly quiet, by the way. Like that was happening, and I don't know what happened to it, but there was a partnership brewing, but that's not what we're talking about. So last week, Oracle had its big CX and application summit. Pat, you and I spent the better part of a couple of days on it, and there is a ton of ground to cover. The first thing to understand that's probably worth everybody knowing is anyone that thinks of Oracle as just database is missing the fact that this company has a extremely diverse set of applications that covers the span of everything from CRM and ERP to human capital management, customer experience, supply chain management, project management, all in the cloud. There's the traditional Oracle CRM in the cloud and traditional Oracle ERP in the cloud. And then there's also Fusion and NetSuite, which are two of the acquisitions that the company made. So this summit really focused a lot on helping the market better understand the positioning, how Oracle is working hard to be a innovator, to be on the front edge. Pat, and I'll let you talk momentarily. You wrote a great piece specific to that topic on Forbes. But for me, I just want to point out a couple things that caught my attention because there's a million directions we could go. First of all, I thought it was really interesting on the CX side that Oracle continues to deepen its partnership with Zoom. There's an integration going on here, and now Oracle is looking at potentially embedding Zoom into a number of its customer experience apps. So as I naturally have always thought the progression would be, is we will more and more get customer service that'll be A, real time, B, driven by ML, AI, and chatbots, and C, will present the opportunity for escalations to be handled in a high quality, real time video and or audio interaction. The embedding of Zoom certainly serves that purpose. The second thing that really caught my attention were some updates that were made to the company's CDP. Now, I'm going to talk more about some CDP here momentarily when we talk about another company, but Oracle is quietly expanding this part of its business in its Unity platform. They're innovating to basically enable B2Bs and B2Cs to be able to use all of the data sprawl seamlessly. And, I think some of the areas that really were enhanced were it's B2B. So for customer data platforms, B2B has always been more difficult than B2C. And so we're starting to see more in-depth data that is helping customers connect to the channel and connect to those more difficult to discern customers that are doing their commerce online. The second thing was the real-time data and real-time behavioral analysis that this software is able to do. I thought that was very interesting. The collection and importing that the new tool is offering, I thought was very, provided a certain level of advanced capabilities that have long been needed. And then finally, a series of partner integrations that are enabling, broader data, but also meeting compliance, which is a big challenge with CDPs because it's great that you have all the data. It's great that you know everything about the customer, but are you breaking the rules? And that's a big challenge that companies have now. And I think I just want to circle this back to when it comes to CDP, which is a hot topic, Oracle has sort of been a company that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Its platform has sort of lagged in some people's eyes behind some of the bigger players. The treasure data used to be part of ARM. The uprising companies like Segment, CDP, which has been kind of the cool new headless style integration. And then of course, Microsoft, which I'll talk more about here momentarily. And then Salesforce, which has come and gone 15 times. But don't mistake, Pat, Oracle is a real player here. And I think that was one of the big takeaways I had. Love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so you hit a lot of the high points. So what I think I'll do is talk about the competition. And it's funny, when I started writing about Oracle apps, my audience really took off. I mean, I think 35,000 people read the first article, and I thought it was juiced. Somebody did advertising, but it was just the level of interest. And I had the chance to talk with the EVP lead at Oracle of applications Steve Miranda, like asking him, hey, how are you taking and why are you taking share from folks like SAP and Salesforce and Workday? And of course, I've talked to enterprise clients and folks like that, but I always like to get kind of that 360, right? Ask the vendor, why do you think you're taking share, right? And what Steve really talked about was customer success. And in the context of, let's say, SAP, it was called Applications Unlimited. And this basically means that customers receive unlimited support on updates to their on-prem apps until they're ready to move to the cloud. And at least what I'm hearing from SAP customers, that is not the case. And in fact, there's a new deadline that came out for some of the latest SAP software. And as it relates to kind of folks like Workday and Salesforce are trying to do what Oracle's doing, which is connecting the back end of the enterprise to the front end, basically connecting the transaction off the database to the front end or the CX or the customer experience. But it's tough, right? You can do the integration path, which I'm not saying is bad. But if you're looking at, let's say, a common data model, workflow engine, those are important things that could make it more important to get an integrated suite. So it's really been an eye opener, Daniel, and for some odd reason, I've had 60,000 people read the last 2 articles that I wrote about Oracle. So I'm definitely hitting a button where I didn't expect to be hitting buttons.
Yeah, I think Oracle is on the precipice of sort of breaking through from being a company that was sort of looked at this big, stodgy monolith to being cool. And we've seen it's possible to do that. We watched it happen over the last 5 to 6 years with the next company I want to talk about, Microsoft. And Oracle has every potential to turn that same leaf. And some of these new modern tools and cloud-based solutions certainly are going to pivot it that way. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, Pat, and everyone out there. You'll be hearing more about this from us. So,
I got to say, I never thought I would be using Oracle and cloud and cool in the same sentence.
Well, we didn't even talk about the infrastructure play, and we'll have to come back to that at some point. But like I said, I mean, I still wrote an article. I mean, I hate when I'm proven wrong, but I wrote an article on MarketWatch that said Oracle is a cloud pretender. And I wrote that about 18 months ago. And I think I like to maybe take credit that article is what got Larry all fired up, Pat. So
I would somebody challenges you on it. Clay and his team have done a great job. And to me, apps were a possibility. And of course, database is a service, but IaaS, are you kidding me? They won a bunch of awards. They got Zoom, they got 8x8, they got TikTok. Pretty cool.
McDonald's. I mean, there's a couple of companies out there that are solidly 1 and 2, Pat. But after that, the race is on, man. I mean, the race is on, and Oracle's saying we're going to play. So I'm interested in watching the next 3 or 4 players really fight for that third and, of course, better position in the long run. But they're a long way. All of them are a long way from either 1 or 2 at this point.
Yeah, I think we're going to see. There's a horizontal market share, and then there's market share within verticals.
Yep.
And I feel like companies, Oracle, I think in itself will be very well assorted when the dust clears in certain verticals and people who value their database.
Yeah, I like them and IBM as vertical clouds. They're both very well suited. So let's talk about Microsoft CDP as well. A week after Ignite, the company comes out with 2 of its biggest announcements around its CDP. Maybe it couldn't get it done in time. Maybe it came down to not wanting to get a big announcement like this lost in the mass that is Ignite. But Dynamics Customer Insights 365, this is their big CDP play. And the company had essentially made two really big announcements on capabilities. First, they GA'd what's called Audience Insights, and the second is a new offering called Engagement Insights. And now, Audience Insights is basically adds to existing capabilities. It's designed, it enables organizations to connect, unify, govern customer data, essentially delivering intelligent insights activated across systems of engagement, analytics platforms. Okay, that's kind of the deets of what it is. In short, though, it really helps the companies that are using this platform and these tools to have a really clear 360, hence the name, degree view of their customers. Again, think about what I was talking about with Unity, same thing. This is the grail right now. This is what companies are after. Now, engagement is the second layer that was really important to the announcement, because being able to understand the customer interactions that a company has across channels has been the mystery, right? You hear things like omni-channel. It's been a dream, Pat. The idea that you can actually go from Twitter to mail to phone to, in store. I remember we used to go to stores and have a consistent, seamless, ubiquitous experience that's good, meaning it's good at all levels, not bad. Bad is easy, good is hard, is complex. And so as we have all this data, being able to improve the CX and integrate customer profiles and customer interactions across websites, mobile apps, connected products into one place is almost impossible. So the focus here is more AI and ML. It's increasing investment in automation. So you're talking about, RPA. You think about what they've done with Power Platform, but also with RPA to be able to take things done in Microsoft. And by the way, take them out in an agnostic fashion, which is what I've always liked about Microsoft's CDP a little more than some of the others, is it doesn't depend on being all on Microsoft. You don't have to be on Dynamics. You could be on Salesforce. You could be on Oracle. You could be on, you could be on anything. Connecting to also email automation tools, HubSpot, Google Ads, Facebook, MailChimp, Marketo, all the toys. And then finally, the company's made a pretty significant set of investments in data privacy and security. Microsoft, has come to realize, and this is all in the underpinnings of Azure, the importance of compliance, privacy, regulatory. And if you're going to do the 360 thing and fully engage customers from top to bottom, you have to be able to make sure you're in compliance. And so Microsoft's making moves there. Again, toe-to-toe, great competition out there. Where I really like Microsoft, though, and where I think the company's really focused is kicking Salesforce in the teeth. I think that's the ambition. But the kind of cool thing about this, Pat, is if you use Salesforce, you can still use Customer Insights 365. So it's an interesting set of tools, Pat, some great advancements. And the company continues to innovate successfully, taking their biz apps layers, their cloud layers, their Power Platform for developers, and making this a real set of tools.
That was great analysis, Daniel.
I left you nothing.
Well, the thing I was going to add is what you added at the end, which is yet another example of Microsoft linking, going east to west on their platforms. And I don't know why they announced this the week after. It would have been really nice to put this in here, but it's here, and I think everybody expected Microsoft to do it, and I think pretty much everybody expected them to do it connecting their different properties. I do believe that some unique things that they bring to the table are security and data privacy. And I think their connection with pretty much any way you want to integrate anything, whether you're no code to low code to a hell of a lot of code, there are big advantages here to work with Microsoft.
And Pat, you'll be really happy to hear for our last two topics, I'm going to be leaving these roads are all clear. This road is all yours. You've been really closely tied to a number of Surface launches. I've been privy to testing some of the products, but you've been working very closely. There's some new Surface devices. So let's hit on that one first, and then we'll wrap up talking a little bit about VMworld. But Surface devices, Pat, what's new? What's hot?
Yeah, so normally on this show, we talk about Microsoft in the context of services, but they have a very robust PC business, devices business as well. I remember when they were squeaking out, they had a run rate of about $1 billion, and people thought that the company was on life support. But we turn around and the company has a $7 billion annual run rate. And now that they've closed their retail stores, I'm assuming that it's very profitable because they do sell their devices at a premium. And it's interesting. I feel like Microsoft has given the Surface team the green light to drive even more revenue. And I think on the plus side, you have an integrated experience between Microsoft software, services, and devices. But it does get a little bit tricky because Microsoft has a bunch of OEMs like Dell and HP and Lenovo and Acer who this competes right ahead. But I digress. I'm going to narrow in on two announcements. The first one was Surface Laptop Go. This is a $549 12.4-inch laptop. I have felt this laptop. It feels very premium, does not feel cheap. I haven't done the review yet, but I think there might be one in a box around the office somewhere. I might be kicking the tires, but the price point is miraculous because most of these devices that Microsoft sells are $999. Now there is a hint that a new line of MacBooks is going to come out right around this price point. So I think this is going to be very, very interesting. But I need to give it the full run. Now, it does come with a 10th gen Intel Core i5, 16 gigs of RAM, and 256 gigs of storage. So we're not talking about some puny configuration for $549. So this is a volume play. This is going to fly off the absolute shelf. And I cannot wait to see what Apple comes out with in October with their new devices. I think the other highlight was an updated Surface Pro X, which is the Qualcomm co-designed SoC that they have. And you're essentially getting more. You're getting more performance. You're getting more battery life. And you're getting a bunch of new colors, which you might say, big yawn, but this is a big deal when it comes to the consumer part of the market. But a very interesting thing that also came out around the same time was essentially the Surface team announcing full support for x64. And what this means is the ability to run 64-bit Windows apps on a 64-bit ARM processor. Now, I think this miraculously aligns with the patents expiring on x64, which ironically are AMD led on the 64-bit x86 patents. But what this does to me is it, along with Apple, it solidifies ARM's potential, like I talked about early when I was dissecting ARM dev event. And the final thing I want to bring up on Windows on ARM is Microsoft added App Assure with Fast Track, which means it will work with enterprises directly if any Windows 10 or Microsoft 365 issues arise, and they'll actually even go in and help you fix it. So these were pretty big announcements around support for ARM. Not surprised, given that literally Apple went all in on their own ARM-based microprocessor a couple months beforehand.
Yeah, I expected this, Pat. It was good to see the support for the 64-bit. Pat, that was a big complaint with the first generation Pro X, that there was just some apps that just did not run or function correctly. This should, in theory, solve some of that, making this device a little bit more of a direct replacement for some traditional x86 processors that, are running Windows. So it'll be interesting, Pat. These are good announcements. And by the way, Microsoft really is a juggernaut these days, and the company's hardware has become pretty extensive. And it will, as you mentioned, be a very interesting thing to watch, the relationships between the OEMs and Microsoft. I don't think there's anywhere else for them to go. But at the same time, Pat, Microsoft used to it was like, at first it was kind of, they're dabbling, they're making a few PCs, but even you never really got the feeling it was a big focus. It's starting to feel big.
Oh my gosh, their first out was a disaster. They had $1 billion write-off of Surface devices. Yeah,
well, we all need those at the end of the year, So anyways, but good stuff there. Great analysis as always. Hey, I'm gonna lob it up one more time. This is an alley-oop, slam dunk. VMworld. I did not have a chance to attend, but big event, always a big event. Unfortunately, I did not make it, so I want to hear, as badly as all of our audience does, what your take was.
Yeah, this is going to be very similar to the analysis of ARM DevCon. I'll hit on a couple of announcements, but I really just wanted to step back and do the big, aha. VMware sometimes gets pegged into this, they're the virtualization company. Well, they've essentially turned into a multi-cloud, any app, any device on any cloud. And they're into Kubernetes in a big way. They're one of the largest software-defined networking companies out there with the most amount of virtualized ports. And they're seemingly becoming one of the largest security companies out there. They've been able to take advantage of a lot of the things that have come out of COVID, namely, how do we secure workloads in a disaggregated remote way? And that is one of the things that this company does well. So Nvidia and VMware essentially came out with a broad partnership. And what this is essentially putting their AI hub called NGC inside of something that they ship to every data center, which is VMware vSphere, Cloud Foundation, VCF, and also Tanzu, which is their top to bottom app and container platform. Also, a big announcement was called Project Monterey, which was really going all in on software-defined data center with things like support for smart NICs or DPUs. Ta-da! That they also support, by the way, Marvell smart NICs as well. And what they did is they re-architected VCF Cloud Foundation to completely disaggregate the server. And it's kind of funny, all the research that I did on AWS and Nitro, this disaggregation of these different layers is definitely helping me out on these announcements. And the final thing that I want to talk about is this notion of intrinsic security architected into everything. And what this is a agentless security. Alleviates the installation and management overhead, consolidates telemetry for all these different workloads, whether they be on the server or on the client. And I really like this. I liked its holistic approach. It's right in alignment with the stated overall goal as a company, which is to enable customers to build, run, manage, and protect any application on any cloud, on any device. I think Michael Dell has a gold mine here. And when they disaggregate this company, it is going to be an absolute rocket ship. Not that it's doing poorly today. It's double digit revenue, but Dell is worth much less than 83% or 86% of VMware, which is what Dell owns of that. So really an incredible company that you talked about these legacy technology companies, some made it and some haven't. VMware has definitely made it for certain.
Yeah, absolutely. VMware's very strong. The multi-cloud container platform Tanzu is going to be a staple in that multi-cloud revolution that we're going through. Of course, you have some open source and you have the IBMs, the OpenShifts that are saying you don't need the virtualization platform, you don't need Tanzu, you can do it with us. But VMware's already in everywhere. So I expect that to continue. I expect that to stay. The company's on solid ground. The partnership with Nvidia, as you mentioned, was impressive. And the incorporation of AI certainly doesn't hurt any part of the stack, Pat. It just doesn't. The only other thing I'll mention is you're absolutely right. One of the most interesting storylines to watch with VMware, and had nothing to do with VMworld per se, is going to be what Dell decides to do. They've already filed, was it the 13D?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. That's basically saying there's an exploratory panel on interest in spinning it off. VMware is probably worth over $80 billion, just VMware, without Dell. And Dell's valuation for market cap is somewhere between 40 and 50 billion, owning over 80% of VMware. So think about that. Makes no sense at all. Michael Dell's genius at work again, but concurrently, it would be a very difficult hole to replace in the lineup in terms of what it means to the overall Dell technologies and Dell infrastructure story. But VMware growing 10+% every quarter, padding the Dell bottom line with each and every earnings season that passes. And I hope the company has a good plan. I said spin it off and buy Nutanix and do it again. That's my idea. May not be a bad one, but I wanted to document that on the record. On October 7, 2020, Dan Newman said on the 6.5 podcast, spin it off, take the billions, buy Nutanix for a quarter of the price, and grow it back up as part of the extension of the Dell Tech EMC story. Pat, great show, man.
Yeah, it was fun. It's great to be back.
It is great to be back. You were missed. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So thank you, everybody out there. Really appreciate it. It's good to be back. Good to have the show. We will be back more. We've got some insider editions coming up. And of course, we've got a great series of podcasts. Most of what we have out there is relevant for at least weeks to months. So please, check out the archive, hit that subscribe button, stay with us. We'll try to get another episode out soon. We know we've been a little lagging in terms of getting our weeklies out. We'll make it up to you. We promise. But for now, for this episode, we got to say goodbye. We'll see you later.